In this video, we're going to be talking about polygroups inside of ZBrush, how to create them, and why you need them in the first place. So having polygroups is going to be the key for you to be able to do really complex shapes inside of ZBrush, and it's also going to help you even when you're sculpting and just making organic surfaces and just having good organization for showing and hiding your model. So let's take a look real quick. I've got an example within here for one of the subtools for the head of this character. So you can see the eyes are separate from the head, and this is from a previous video seeing how this was built. But this polygroup right here for the eyes makes it so I can just hold down Control and Shift and then click on that, and then hold down Control, click in the open viewport once, hold down Control and Shift and bring everything back. And now I've got those eyes and they're masked off, and I can freely sculpt on the rest of the head and not worry about changing the shape of the eyes. So that's one way that these things are kind of powerful. The other thing is that it can help you whenever you go to split up this model. So say this was a one-piece model like this, and we built a polygroup for the top part of the head and a polygroup for the bottom part of the head. It's actually possible for you to split a model depending on the polygroups that you have there. So there's another functionality that comes in kind of handy. So let's take a look at that real quick. Let's look at actually creating a polygroup. So in the earlier video, there's different ways that we can actually build up polygroups. We can hold down Control and paint a mask, and we could mask out this section of the head. Let me hide the polyframe real quick. I could work my way around the model, and if we want to subtract from the mask, we can hold down Control and Alt, and we can draw, and then I'll take away from the mask. So I keep working my way around just to where I got a pretty nice shape for this ear, because again, we will be using this polygroup to basically cut this off from the head. So I'm just working my way around, subtracting that away. And I think that looks pretty good. So we can harden up that mask by holding down Control and Alt and clicking on the mask, and you can see here's basically this polygroup that will be created from this. So anytime you have a mask and you want to make a polygroup out of it, you just hit Control W, and that's going to turn that into a new polygroup. Actually, I have the eyes selected with a mask. If you remember, I just masked that off. So it's pretty easy for me to get rid of that with these polygroups. I can hold down Control Shift, click on the eyes, and now I can drag a mask over here, holding down Control. I'm going to add the Alt modifier, and that takes away from that mask. I'll bring everything back, Control Shift. So just get used to using this Control Shift quite a bit when you're working with polygroups. So here we are. I've got this mask, and I'll hit Control W, and we've got a new polygroup just for this portion. It looks like I missed a little bit of the inner part of the ear, so I'm going to hit Undo, hold down Control, and just make sure I'm drawing in there, hit Control W. There we go. So there's my new piece right here like this. So I've got different polygroups, one for the ear, one for the head, and one for the eyes. Now if I go to this split and I say Group Split, it's going to actually split these off into different pieces for me. So here's my head, here's the eyes now, separate piece, and the ear is a separate piece as well. Okay, so the other way that we can build these polygroups, if I go to this part of the head, we could just hold down Control and Shift and drag out a marquee like this from the open viewport, and anything green, when I let go of this, whatever's inside of this box is going to be visible and everything else is going to be hidden. So we could hit Control W just like we did with a mask, and that'll make a new polygroup for this right here like that. So that's one way of doing things. The other thing we could do, instead of holding down Control and Shift and using a select rectangle, we can click on here while we're holding down Control and Shift, and you can see we've got a bunch of different options. We've got a select rectangle, or select lasso. So let's hold down Control and Shift and see how you can basically draw any kind of abstract shape using the lasso. So let's say I want to be a little more specific about this portion here. So it's going to show this visibility here. I don't want this polygroup that I've already got. So if I want to subtract it from whatever is visible here, hold down Control and Shift, and then just click in that area. Now if I hit Control W, it's going to make a polygroup for that. And let me show you what we're doing here. If we go to Polygroups, we're just saying group visible. And that's basically what that hotkey is kind of giving us there at that point for that. Okay, so we've looked at masking as one way to build a polygroup, just using Control and Shift and using the select rectangles. Another way, you could use the select lasso as another method for building polygroups. And the last method I'm going to show you, if you hold down Control and Shift, you can see there's a slice circle, slice curve, and slice rectangle. So let's do slice circle real quick. And if we hold down Control and Shift and then just right click, there should be this option for polygroups. I'm not going to turn it on. Let's just see what behavior this gives us when we don't even select polygroups for that. So I've got it on Control Shift. We've got it on this slice circle, and we've got the polyframe on. And we're going to click and drag out this, and it's going to give me an oval shape. If I want to move that around while I'm holding down Control and Shift, I just add the space modifier, and I can just push this around anywhere I want on the canvas, and I can let go of space and continue to keep growing this. Now keep this in mind, I'm holding on Control and Shift the entire time that I'm doing this. So whenever you're happy with whatever that shape is, then just let go of everything, and it's actually going to slice through the model. So this one, you don't need to right click and say polygroups to turn this on. It's automatically going to slice through the model and make a polygroup for you. So this is pretty cool. We can move this thing around, and I can be pretty accurate with this. And let's say I want to build up something like this with the polygroups. So I've got that, right? Now the whole advantage of this is if we hold down Control and Shift and put this back on our select rectangle, we're building up a shape library that makes it really easy for us to select things, take away selection, and basically let me step you through this. So you saw Control Shift. If you click on a piece, and let's just say we want to work on this piece of the head, we can just click it and it's going to hide everything else. But if we want the inverse of that, we can hold down Control and Shift, click on this piece, and now it's given us the inverse of that. The other thing we can do is hold down Control and Shift, drag a marquee in the open viewport, and it's going to give us the inverse. Now if we've got a piece hidden and we want to keep hiding different pieces, we can hold down Control and Shift and then select various pieces, and it's going to keep taking selections away as far as visibility goes for what we see. So I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and keep going here. So here we are, we've got these two different polygroups. So say we want to join them into one polygroup. Since these are the only things that are visible, we can hit Control W for that. And then now that becomes a new polygroup as well. Okay, so you saw the holding down Control and Shift, and we looked at slice circle. Let's look at slice curve. Okay, so slice curve is going to let us go hold down Control and Shift, start dragging a line in the open viewport, and you can do a straight line. You can do this, just drag from this point. And actually I drew that, after I drew that first point, you can let go of the Control and Shift, and you can just drag this out. This one's the same as the circle. We can hold down the space bar and you can move that line around. So we can drag out a straight line. If we double tap Alt, it'll give us a crisp point to start working with. Double tap Alt again. And if I want to do something that's smooth, I just tap Alt once and then drag out, and I can hit Alt again and drag out, and you can see you can build a curve. And when I let go of this, it's actually going to slice through the model, just like what you see here. And so that's another way that you can actually build up polygroups. Now, this is using Dynamesh, so there's no subdivision levels, so no problem doing this. If you've got subdivision levels, you're going to want to use the method of actually just controlling visibility and then making a polygroup, or making a mask and making a polygroup, because this slice function actually cuts through the geometry and changes the topology and things like that. So again, using Dynamesh is a different way of using topology than if you're using subdivision levels, and that's going to be up to you and your workflows to determine which one is going to be the right one for you. The last thing we'll look at is hold down Control and Shift, and then we'll go to select rectangle, and we can drag that out like this. And it's just like the other ones. It's going to just slice through the model and make a new polygroup depending on what we're using with that shape. I do want to hop back real quick to the slice curve, and I want to show you something that I think is pretty darn cool for this. I'm going to hit undo just to get back to where we've got just like one big polygroup, just to make it pretty obvious what's going on here. So if we hold on Control and Shift with this slice curve, like what we looked at before, it's pretty easy for us to build a line like this, and we could do something cool shape-wise. Let's do something like that. So we can see this. I had undo history on there, just barking at me about that. We've sliced the model, and that's pretty cool. But what we also have the option to do is hold down Control and Shift, and then right click. And I told you we don't need this polygroup thing, but this B radius is actually going to look at the size of our brush. So if we tap S and make it a little bit larger, you can see the radius of our brush. So if we come over here and we hold down Control and Shift and drag out our line, I'm going to tap Alt to make a point, and just double tap Alt to make another point, tap Alt and make something that's curved, and then let go. It's going to slice the model, but depending on our brush size that we have, it's going to actually slice the model, and it's going to build this ridge between here. I have noticed that sometimes it has a little bit of trouble using these corner pieces like this. So we can just put it back on our slice curve, and I'm going to remove this B radius thing. So I'm going to hold on Control Shift, right click, and let's zoom out because I'm actually on the model. It has to be in the open viewport. Control Shift, then right click, and then I'm going to turn off this B radius. So another thing with the slice tool is that if we go over a section, we don't have to slice through the entire model like this. We can actually just go from this piece to this piece, and you can see it's made a new polygroup for us in that area, and we could keep slicing this thing up like that. So that comes in pretty handy as well. But if we kind of steal that functionality here, you can see maybe we can build a new section right in through here like that. And so it gave us this new polygroup right here, and I'm going to put it on the select rectangle, holding down Control Shift, put it on here. I'm going to click this piece, click it again to hide it, and then hide this section. I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to get the inverse of this. Control Shift, drag in the open viewport, and here's a new polygroup. I'm just going to hit Control W for that. So we've got that new polygroup. And if I want to subtract away some littler small pieces from this, I'm going to hold down Control Shift just like we did with the visibility before. And if we add the Alt modifier to it, you can see it's going to turn that red. Now with anything that's within that red box is actually going to be hidden away. So I'm just going to hide a few more of these pieces here like that. And now I can hit Control W and make a whole new polygroup from that. And I might have some really small pieces like this. There are some tools within inside of the polygroups to kind of deal with little tiny small polygons that might be drifting, and that is called merge stray groups right here like that. We'll see it actually picked up this one, but it looked like this little polygroup here was too big for it to pick up. So I'm going to hold down Control Shift, click on this group here, and it actually is pulling everything. I was thinking it was going to just get that little tiny group. I can click it again, and this big piece. I'm going to hold down Control and Shift, drag in the open viewport like that, and then hit Control W, and my polygroup is now created. So again, we could be using this, and we could actually slice these pieces off. Here's something else to kind of talk about these slice tools that we've been looking at. There's no symmetry on that. So if we got this perspective on, you can see it's done some really odd stuff with this here. We've got some tools within the Deformation tab that will help out with this problem. It's mainly when we're using things like Dynamesh. So we can go to the area for deformation and open that up. And if we do mirror, we're going to push it over to this side because this operation that we're going to do only works from the right side of the model pushing over. So that's why we mirrored it across like this. Otherwise, we would be getting this side and it would mirror it across for us later. So I'm going to mirror that like this just to flip-flop the model. And then under geometry, there is a modify topology, and then there's a mirror and weld. And so you can see now it's going to take that and push that exact copy and build a line down the center of it. So again, if we did not flip that thing before we did with the deformation, if we just use this mirror and weld, it's going to mirror and weld this, which obviously we don't want. So I'm just going to get back to the portion of the model that we had here and then go back to that deformation, mirror it. So this is what I want to keep and I want to hold. And then I need to go to that geometry and go to modify topology and say mirror and weld. And we've got that model nice and shored up. So there's quite a few different options for looking at how to create polygroup. This is going to become even more powerful for us whenever we start using the hard surface techniques, but this is the beginning of getting us there. But these things do help out even whenever you're working with organic modeling as well. It's really going to help you kind of quickly and easily slice up your model and get pieces that you're looking for to be able to build masks. So really take some time and learn how to use the polygroups within inside of ZBrush correctly, because it really is a very powerful feature set that can really help speed up your workflow and just improve your overall art when you take the time to actually learn these tools.